My friends, there is a moment in every heart where faith is tested, where patience feels like pain and waiting feels like a wilderness. You've prayed, you've cried, you've hoped, and yet heaven seems silent. You've watched others move ahead while you remain still, and your heart whispers, "Why not me, Lord?" But the truth I want to share with you today is this: God's timing is not delayed, it is divine. His clock does not run by the hands of this world, it runs on eternity. He is never early, never late, but always right on time. There are moments in life when you feel as though God has forgotten your name, when your dreams seem to fade into dust. You've given all your effort, prayed with all your might, and yet the breakthrough doesn't come. The healing doesn't arrive. The answer you long for seems distant, but hear this truth deep in your soul: the waiting season is not wasted time. It's preparation time. God is shaping your faith, strengthening your trust, refining your heart, and setting the stage for a miracle greater than what you've imagined. The greatest stories in Scripture were written through waiting. Abraham waited for the promise of a son, though years turned into decades. Joseph waited in a prison before stepping into a palace. David waited in the shadows of caves before sitting on the throne. Even Jesus waited 30 years before beginning his ministry. Waiting is not a punishment, it is part of the process. God uses the waiting to prepare us for the blessing. He doesn't just want to give us abundance. He wants us to have the character to handle it. You see, our impatience often pushes us toward paths that lead to disappointment. We try to force what only faith can birth. We run ahead of God's plan, thinking we can open doors He has not yet unlocked. And when things fall apart, we wonder where He was. But my friends, the truth is He was always there, holding back what wasn't ready, protecting us from what could have destroyed us, and shaping our hearts to receive what He already prepared. There's beauty in divine delay. It teaches us dependence. It humbles the proud heart and builds the faithful soul. When God makes you wait, He is never withholding to punish you. He is preparing something greater to bless you. What you call a delay, God calls design. What you see as rejection is often redirection. And what feels like silence may actually be His hand arranging something you can't yet see. You may not understand the journey you're on right now. You might be facing unanswered prayers, closed doors, or seasons of stillness. But remember this: faith is not proven when everything is easy. Faith is proven when nothing makes sense and you still choose to trust. When you say, "Lord, I don't understand your ways, but I trust your heart," you are declaring that your hope does not depend on circumstances, it depends on His character. Think about the seed planted deep in the soil. For a long time, nothing appears to happen. The ground looks the same day after day. But beneath the surface, life is forming. Roots are digging deep, strengthening, preparing for growth. If the seed could talk, it might cry out, "Why am I buried? Why am I forgotten?" Yet if it weren't buried, it could never bloom. And so it is with you. You may feel buried in pain, loss, or uncertainty, but you are not buried. You are planted. Your season of abundance is coming. The Lord has not forgotten you. He has not overlooked your prayers. His promises are not broken. They are simply being fulfilled in His time. Sometimes He delays not to deny, but to deliver something far beyond what you could ask for. You may be praying for the small door of opportunity, but God is preparing a gate of blessing. You may be asking for the strength to survive, but He's getting ready to help you thrive. You may be asking for an answer, but He's preparing an entire story. When you walk with God, patience is not weakness, it's wisdom. It is trusting that the one who holds the universe in His hands also holds your tomorrow. The same God who paints the sunrise at the perfect moment, who commands the tides, who orchestrates the stars, will not fail to align your life in His divine rhythm. His timing may test you, but it will never betray you. There's something sacred about waiting faithfully. When you wait, you're declaring that God's promises are worth the patience. You're saying that your faith isn't dependent on how fast He moves, but on who He is. And when you learn to rest in His timing, you begin to experience peace that surpasses understanding. Some of you have been waiting for healing physically, emotionally, spiritually. You've asked, "Lord, when will you restore me?" And though you can't see it yet, restoration is being written behind the scenes. Others have been waiting for a door to open, a job, a relationship, a breakthrough. But sometimes God closes doors not to deny you, but to protect you from settling for less than His best. He will not let you walk into rooms that could limit your destiny. There's a powerful moment that happens when you stop trying to control the outcome and start trusting the one who controls time itself. The moment you let go, peace enters. The moment you surrender, strength rises. You don't need to understand every detail to trust the direction. You just need to know who is leading you. God's abundance doesn't always come wrapped in wealth or success. Sometimes abundance looks like peace in the middle of pain. Sometimes it looks like joy that outlasts sorrow. Sometimes it looks like purpose born out of waiting. But make no mistake, when you trust His timing, abundance always follows. For God never leads a heart that trusts Him into emptiness. You see, our impatience can cause us to miss miracles. We often want things instantly. A world of quick results, fast answers, and immediate satisfaction. But the spiritual life is not microwave faith. It's slow, cooked trust. It's choosing to believe when the evidence seems gone. It's holding on to the promise when the path is unclear. Even when life feels like a detour, God knows exactly where you're going. Every delay, every disappointment, every closed door is guiding you closer to your divine appointment. His timing is not random, it's redemptive. He uses time to heal, to shape, and to prepare you for the very blessing you prayed for. The enemy wants you to grow weary, to give up in the waiting, to believe that silence means absence. But silence is often God's way of saying, trust me. He's not ignoring your prayer. He's perfecting the answer. He's weaving the threads of your story in ways you can't yet see. And when the time is right, the beauty of His plan will unfold. And you'll look back in awe, realizing that every tear, every trial, every waiting season was worth it. When you trust God's timing, you live in peace instead of panic. You learn to walk instead of run ahead. You learn to worship while you wait. You stop measuring your life by the pace of others and start focusing on the purpose He's placed within you, because your journey is uniquely designed and your season will bloom exactly when it's meant to. Sometimes the blessing takes time because God is working on more than just your situation. He's working on you. He's teaching you to depend on Him, not the outcome. He's teaching you that faith is not about getting what you want, but believing that He knows what's best. And when you learn that, you'll discover freedom even in the waiting. So don't lose heart if the promise seems far away. God hasn't forgotten what He spoke over your life. The same voice that called creation into being will fulfill His word for you. Keep trusting, keep praying, keep believing. Your waiting is not in vain. It's sacred ground where miracles begin to form. The abundance God has for you is already written into your destiny. It's not lost. It's simply waiting for the right moment to manifest. You are closer than you think, nearer than you feel, and stronger than you know. Every delay has purpose. Every tear waters your future harvest. Every prayer builds your faith. And when that moment comes, when God's perfect timing unfolds, everything will make sense. The doors will open, the path will clear, the purpose will shine. You will stand in awe of how He turned every waiting moment into a masterpiece of faith. So, my friend, trust His timing, rest in His promise, believe in His plan, because abundance awaits the one who refuses to rush the hands of God. When you can wait with peace, walk with patience, and worship through uncertainty, you position yourself for the kind of blessing that cannot be shaken, stolen, or stopped. Your story isn't over, it's unfolding. The author hasn't finished writing. The next chapter is filled with abundance, purpose, and divine fulfillment. Keep your heart open, your faith strong, and your eyes fixed on the one who knows exactly when to bring it all together. For in His perfect time, you will see that everything you've waited for, prayed for, and hoped for was worth every moment of trust. And that's the beauty of God's timing. When it comes with abundance beyond your imagination. Trust that God's timing is never delayed. It's divinely designed for your good. That simple truth has the power to change how you see every moment of your life, especially the moments that feel uncertain, empty, or delayed. We live in a world that measures time by minutes and hours, by deadlines and schedules. We want everything now, answers, success, love, healing, direction. But God does not work within our impatience. His timing is eternal, flawless, and purposeful. Every delay, every detour, every unanswered prayer is not a mistake. It's a masterpiece still being painted. You may not see the full picture right now, but the brush is in his hands, and he knows exactly what he's doing. There are times when you pray for something with all your heart, and heaven seems silent. You wonder why nothing is moving, why everything feels still. It's easy in those moments to assume God has forgotten you, that perhaps your prayer was too small or your faith too weak. But his silence does not mean absence. His stillness does not mean neglect. It often means that he is preparing something far greater than what you asked for. When God delays, he's not punishing you. He's positioning you. He's arranging the right people, shaping the right circumstances, aligning the right opportunities so that when your moment comes, it will be perfect. If you look throughout Scripture, you'll see that God's timing has always been perfect. Abraham waited decades for Isaac. Joseph waited years in a prison before stepping into the palace. Moses waited 40 years in the wilderness before leading his people to freedom. David was anointed as king long before he sat on the throne. None of these people were forgotten, and neither are you. God was preparing them in the waiting. He was strengthening their faith, deepening their trust, and teaching them to rely on his plan rather than their own. The same God who orchestrated their lives with divine precision is orchestrating yours right now, even in the moments that don't make sense. The truth is, our perspective of time is limited. We see minutes, but God sees eternity. We see what's directly in front of us, but he sees the end from the beginning. Sometimes, what feels like a delay is actually his mercy protecting us from walking into something we're not ready for. Sometimes the doors that don't open are the very ones that would have led us away from our calling. The relationships that didn't last, the opportunities that fell apart, the prayers that seemed unanswered, all of these may have been God's way of saving you from lesser things so he could give you greater ones. When you trust his timing, you learn to thank him not only for what he gives, but also for what he withholds. There is power in surrendering your timetable to God. It takes humility to say, Lord, I trust that you know better than I do. It's not easy because we like control. We like to plan. We want to know when, how, and why. But faith is not about knowing. It's about trusting. It's believing that even when life feels out of control, God is still in control. It's choosing to rest when everything in you wants to rush. It's learning to be still and know that he is God, even when nothing seems to be moving. When you truly trust God's timing, anxiety loses its grip on your heart. You stop comparing your journey to others. You stop looking at someone else's success as a sign of your failure. You begin to realize that your story is unfolding exactly as it should, according to his plan, not yours. The pace of his purpose is not hurried, because true transformation takes time. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are right where you're supposed to be. Every day of waiting is a part of his perfect process to shape you into who you're meant to become. Sometimes God delays the blessing to develop the believer. If he gave you everything you prayed for right now, you might not be ready to handle it. There's a maturity that grows in waiting. There's wisdom that forms in patience. The waiting season teaches you to depend on God rather than outcomes. It breaks pride and builds perseverance. It deepens gratitude so that when the blessing finally arrives, you can carry it with grace, not arrogance. When God blesses you, he wants you to be ready for it, not crushed by it. And readiness comes through trust, through learning that his ways are higher, his plans are better, and his timing is perfect. There are moments in life when your heart will ache from the wait. You will feel the tension between what you know God can do and what he hasn't done yet. That space between promise and fulfillment can be the hardest place to live, but it's also the place where faith grows strongest. It's the place where you learn to walk by faith and not by sight. When you can't trace his hand, you trust his heart. When you can't see what he's doing, you believe he's working behind the scenes. Think about the farmer who plants a seed in the ground. He doesn't dig it up the next day to check if it's growing. He knows growth takes time. He knows the soil is doing a hidden work beneath the surface. The same is true for you. You may not see visible progress right now, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. God is doing something in the dark, cultivating, shaping, and preparing your harvest. The seed must remain underground for a season before it can break through. Don't give up in the dark just because you don't see the light yet. Trust that the one who planted you knows exactly when to bring forth your fruit. God's timing is like the rhythm of a divine orchestra. Each note, each pause, each rest is intentional. If the music played too soon, it would lose its harmony. Likewise, if your blessings arrived before their appointed time, they might lose their purpose. You have to trust the conductor. He knows the tempo of your life. He knows when to lead you into quietness and when to bring you into abundance. His timing creates beauty that your rushing could never achieve. Often the hardest part about trusting God's timing is when others seem to receive what you've been praying for. You see them getting married, promoted, healed, blessed, while you're still waiting. But comparison poisons contentment. Their timeline is not yours. God's plan for them is not his plan for you. You are not forgotten in the crowd. You are individually loved and intentionally guided. What God has for you will never miss you. It will arrive at the exact moment it's meant to, and not a second earlier. When you trust his timing, you start to live with peace instead of pressure. You stop trying to make things happen and start allowing them to happen through him. You begin to see every delay as divine, every detour as direction, and every disappointment as an opportunity to deepen your dependence. The waiting transforms from frustration to faith. You learn to say, Lord, even if it takes longer than I expected, I know it's for my good. The enemy wants to convince you that delay means denial. He wants you to believe that if it hasn't happened yet, it never will. But the truth is, God is never in a hurry, and he's never late. He is not bound by time. He created time. What looks slow to you is right on schedule for him. Sometimes he lets you walk through seasons of waiting to show you that his presence is your greatest gift, not just his promises. When you learn to find peace in his presence rather than in outcomes, you are truly walking in faith. And so, when you find yourself in those quiet, uncertain seasons, when your prayers seem unanswered and your plans fall apart, remember this truth: God is still working. He's working in ways you can't see, in places you don't expect, and in timing you can't control. You may feel behind, but you're right on schedule. You may feel forgotten, but you are deeply known. His timing is not delayed. It's divinely designed for your good, because every second of your waiting is leading you toward the abundance he's already prepared for you. Waiting seasons are not wasted. They are seasons of preparation and growth. Those words may sound comforting, but when you are living through the waiting, they can be hard to believe. Waiting tests the deepest parts of your faith. It presses against your patience, your understanding, and even your hope. But the truth remains: God never wastes a season. Every moment of stillness, every delay, every quiet place where nothing seems to move forward is part of his divine process to prepare you for what's coming next. The waiting season is not a punishment. It's a classroom where faith matures and character is refined. In life, we often rush toward the next thing. We want results quickly, answers immediately, and breakthroughs overnight. But growth doesn't happen in the rush. It happens in the waiting. You cannot skip the seasons God designed to strengthen you. Just as a tree must spend time rooted in the soil before it ever produces fruit, your soul must also spend time being grounded in God's presence before you step into your destiny. Waiting doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're being shaped. God is working in the unseen, preparing you inwardly for the blessings that are coming outwardly. If you think about the great people of faith, each of them went through a waiting season before stepping into their calling. Noah waited years for the rain that would confirm his obedience. Joseph waited in a prison cell for the promise that one day he would lead. Moses waited in the wilderness for decades before he heard God's voice from the burning bush. Even Jesus spent years in quiet preparation before stepping into his public ministry. God uses waiting to develop wisdom, patience, humility, and faith, qualities that can't be rushed or learned in comfort. You may feel like your waiting is unproductive, but in heaven's eyes, it is some of the most valuable time of your life. The waiting season is often where God teaches you who he is. When everything slows down and the noise fades, you are left with only his voice and your faith. It's there in the quiet that he reveals his heart to you. It's in the waiting that you learn that your relationship with him is not about what he can do for you, but about who he is to you. You start to realize that his presence is better than any promise, and his love is greater than any outcome. Waiting draws you deeper into intimacy with Him, because it's in those moments of stillness that you discover the peace that surpasses understanding. Waiting seasons can feel lonely. People may not understand your journey. They may question why things aren't happening faster for you, why doors seem closed, why the prayers haven't been answered. But God often separates you in the waiting, so He can prepare you privately before revealing you publicly. He hides you for a purpose. He protects what He's growing in you, so that when the time comes, you will stand strong and steady in your calling. There are things He wants to teach you in solitude that you could never learn in the spotlight. He allows certain doors to remain shut because He knows the weight that comes with the blessing, and He wants you to be ready to carry it. Sometimes the waiting feels like a wilderness. You look around and see no progress, no fruit, no movement. But the wilderness is where faith grows deep roots. It's where you stop relying on your own strength and start depending completely on God's. It's in those wilderness moments that you learn how to pray from your heart, not from habit. You learn to listen more than you speak. You learn to trust even when you can't trace what He's doing. What seems barren is often the very place where God is preparing to bring forth the most abundant harvest. The waiting season also exposes what's inside of us. It shows us whether our faith is rooted in outcomes or in God Himself. Anyone can believe when life is easy, when prayers are answered quickly and blessings are visible. But true faith is tested when nothing changes. It's when you can say, even if it takes longer than I hoped, I still believe. Even if I don't understand, I still trust. That kind of faith can't be shaken because it's been forged through endurance. It's the kind of faith that can stand firm in storms and stay peaceful in uncertainty. There's something sacred about the hidden seasons of life. When no one sees your tears, when your prayers echo in silence, when you feel forgotten, those are the moments that build spiritual strength. God sees your faithfulness in private. He sees the small acts of obedience, the quiet moments of surrender, the unseen faith you live out daily. And when the time is right, He will reward what has been done in secret. Nothing you go through is wasted, not the delays, not the disappointments, not the seasons that feel like pauses. God recycles every pain, every lesson, every waiting moment into purpose. You may not realize it now, but waiting changes you. It transforms how you see life and how you see God. It teaches you to slow down, to listen, to value process over speed. You learn that rushing can ruin what God is refining. You begin to understand that delay is not denial, but divine direction. God is preparing you in ways you cannot yet see. He's aligning people, timing, and circumstances. He's clearing paths that could have trapped you. He's softening hearts, including your own. The longer you wait, the more you grow, and the more you grow, the more capable you become of receiving what He has promised. Think about the process of gold being refined. It has to go through intense heat before its impurities are burned away. Only then does it shine with true brilliance. The waiting season is your refining fire. It burns away impatience, pride, fear, and doubt, leaving behind a faith that is pure and steadfast. The pain of waiting is not without purpose. It's producing something inside of you that comfort never could. You're becoming stronger, wiser, and more like the person God created you to be. The waiting season also shifts your perspective. It teaches gratitude for small blessings and faith in small beginnings. It helps you see that joy isn't found in what you receive, but in who you become through the journey. Waiting humbles you and reminds you that you're not in control. It trains you to walk in step with God rather than run ahead of Him. It builds patience that sustains you long after the blessing comes, because abundance without maturity can destroy what it was meant to bless. God's goal is not just to answer your prayers, but to prepare you for them. Waiting seasons can feel endless, but they always lead somewhere. When you look back on the times you thought were wasted, you'll see how God used every second. The people you met, the lessons you learned, the strength you built, all of it becomes part of your preparation. God doesn't move fast, He moves right. And when He finally opens the door, you'll realize that every moment of waiting had a purpose. The wisdom you gained, the resilience you built, the faith you developed, those are treasures that will carry you through the next season of life. So while you wait, don't waste it wishing it away. Worship in the waiting. Serve in the waiting. Pray in the waiting. Learn in the waiting. Become in the waiting. Because waiting is not the absence of progress. It's the soil of transformation. God is not just preparing your blessing, He's preparing you to hold it well. The roots of your faith are growing deeper than you can imagine, and the fruit will come in due season. The waiting is not empty, it's full of unseen purpose. What feels like rejection is often God's redirection towards something greater. This is a truth that can change the way you view every closed door, every disappointment, and every no you encounter in life. When we face rejection, whether in relationships, careers, opportunities, or even in prayer, our natural response is to feel despair, frustration, or even anger. We wonder why God would allow such setbacks, why He wouldn't answer our prayers, or why things didn't go according to our plans. But the truth is that what we perceive as rejection is often God's way of protecting us, redirecting us, and leading us towards something far better than we could imagine. Life is full of moments when things do not go our way. You may have prayed for a promotion and been passed over, hoped for a relationship that didn't last, or waited for a breakthrough that never came at the time you expected. In those moments, it is easy to feel forgotten or abandoned. But God is never careless with our lives. He sees what we cannot see. He knows the full story, the big picture that stretches far beyond the horizon of our understanding. When doors close, it is often because He is guiding us to the right door, the one that will lead to our destiny. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. By human standards, he had been rejected at every turn. Yet, every step of that rejection was part of God's plan to elevate him to a place of influence where he could save nations from famine. What looked like rejection to Joseph was actually preparation and positioning for something greater. This is often how God works in our lives. What we see as failure is often the soil in which our future success and blessing are being nurtured. When we face rejection, it is natural to ask, why not me? Why now? But these questions reflect our limited perspective. Our understanding is shaped by time and circumstances, whereas God's understanding transcends both. He knows the paths we cannot see, the obstacles that could harm us, and the opportunities that are waiting in the wings. God's redirection is always rooted in love. He does not turn us away arbitrarily. He guides us toward what is best for our lives, even if it does not match our immediate desires. Sometimes rejection is necessary to prevent us from walking into situations that would have been harmful. We may see others receiving blessings, positions, or opportunities, and we might feel left behind. But God's redirection is intentional. He knows the consequences that we cannot foresee. He knows the people who might lead us astray, the circumstances that could break us, or the timing that could hinder our success. What we initially see as denial is often divine protection. God closes doors not to punish, but to preserve and prepare us for something far better. Redirection requires trust. It requires us to believe that even when our plans fall apart, God's plan remains unshakable. It is easy to cling to what we know, what we hope for, or what we envision for our lives. But God invites us to let go of our limited perspective and embrace His guidance. When we surrender our expectations, we open ourselves to His possibilities. The moment we realize that a no is not the end but a redirection, we begin to see our challenges in a new light. What felt like rejection can become a gateway to a greater destiny, a blessing that is perfectly aligned with God's purpose. Consider the way God orchestrates opportunities in life. Sometimes He allows us to experience disappointment so that we will turn our hearts to Him more fully. Sometimes He delays our dreams so that we will develop patience and resilience. Sometimes He closes doors so that He can open a gate that we never even imagined. Rejection is not a signal that God has abandoned us. It is a signal that He is preparing a pathway that aligns with His wisdom, His timing, and His plan. What He is redirecting us toward may be more abundant, more fruitful, and more fulfilling than we could have ever envisioned. Many of us have encountered rejection in relationships. Perhaps someone we loved deeply chose another path, or a partnership that we invested in ended abruptly. These experiences can leave us feeling unworthy or discouraged. Yet God's redirection is at work even in our hearts. He is teaching us lessons about patience, discernment, and trust. He is guiding us to people, places, and opportunities that will honor His purpose for our lives. Just as a parent redirects a child away from danger, God redirects us to protect us from outcomes that may hinder our growth or well. being. The workplace is another arena where redirection often takes place. We may apply for a job we desire, work hard to impress, and still face rejection. In that moment, it can feel like the world has turned against us. But what if God is redirecting us to a position where our skills, talents, and purpose will be maximized? What if the job we didn't get was not a loss, but a setup for something far greater? Every rejection carries within it a lesson, a preparation, and a push toward a more fitting opportunity. Spiritual growth also comes through experiences of redirection. When God redirects us, He is not just changing our circumstances, He is shaping our hearts. He is teaching us to rely on Him, to trust His wisdom, and to walk in obedience even when the outcome is unclear. Rejection reminds us that we are not in control. It teaches humility, patience, and faith. It encourages us to seek His guidance more fervently and to recognize that His purposes are greater than our plans. It is important to remember that God's redirection is always accompanied by His provision. When He closes one door, He opens another. When He redirects, He does not abandon us. There is always a pathway forward, even if it is not the path we initially envisioned. The abundance He has prepared for us often comes in ways we could not have orchestrated ourselves. What we see as a setback is part of a grander narrative, a story that God is writing with precision and care. Faith plays a critical role in responding to rejection and redirection. It is easy to feel discouraged, to let disappointment cloud our judgment, and to doubt God's goodness. But faith allows us to see beyond the immediate circumstances. Faith reminds us that God's ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts higher than our thoughts. Faith enables us to recognize that rejection is not the end of our story, but a redirection toward the fulfillment of God's promises. When we embrace faith, we understand that even closed doors are part of God's plan to guide us to a greater destiny. The challenge is to remain patient and trusting in the waiting that accompanies redirection. We are conditioned to seek immediate results, to demand answers quickly, and to control our circumstances. But God's timing is perfect and His direction is intentional. He may delay the fulfillment of our desires to prepare us, to strengthen us, or to align us with the right people and opportunities. The rejection we face today may be laying the foundation for a blessing tomorrow, a blessing that is far greater than we could imagine. Rejection and redirection are not signs of God's absence. They are evidence of His involvement. Every no we experience is an invitation to trust Him more deeply, to seek His guidance more earnestly, and to follow His plan more faithfully. When we recognize that what appears as rejection is often divine redirection, our perspective shifts. We begin to see obstacles not as endings, but as openings, setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities, and closed doors not as denials, but as detours toward a more abundant future. In the midst of disappointment, it is essential to keep our hearts open to God's guidance. We may not understand why certain things happen, why certain doors remain closed, or why our plans are thwarted, but we can trust that God sees the complete picture. He knows the timing, the circumstances, and the people involved. He knows the blessings that await us if we remain faithful and obedient. Rejection is not a reflection of our worth. It is a reflection of God's perfect wisdom, redirecting us to the path that aligns with His will. Sometimes God's redirection requires courage. It may mean letting go of familiar plans, releasing dreams we've held onto for years, or stepping into the unknown. It is never easy to embrace change, especially when we have invested time, energy, and emotion into something. But God asks us to trust Him, to step out in faith, and to follow the path He sets before us. Redirection is not a punishment. It is an opportunity to align ourselves with His greater plan, to experience His abundance, and to walk in the purpose He has designed for our lives. Rejection is never the final word when God is at work. What appears as disappointment today may become the source of your greatest joy tomorrow. Every closed door, every no, every delay is part of a divine strategy to bring you to a place of fulfillment, blessing, and abundance. God's redirection is always purposeful, always protective, and always guided by His perfect wisdom. When we embrace it with faith, patience, and obedience, we position ourselves to receive the blessings that await us and to walk in the destiny He has prepared. The key is to see rejection not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. To understand that God's redirection is a demonstration of His love, His wisdom, and His perfect timing. to trust that every closed door, every setback, and every disappointment is not the end of your story, but a step towards something far greater than you could imagine. Every rejection carries within it the seeds of a blessing, a pathway to growth, and a lesson that will prepare you for the abundance that God has in store. When we learn to trust God's redirection, we discover freedom from despair, peace in uncertainty, and hope in waiting. We begin to see that rejection is not a verdict, but a guidance, not a punishment, but a protection, and not a failure, but a foundation. God is guiding us, shaping us, and leading us to the abundant life He has promised. What feels like rejection is often the very hand of God at work, redirecting us toward a destiny that is richer, higher, and more fulfilling than we could ever have imagined. Faith is proven when you trust God even when nothing makes sense. That is one of the deepest tests of a believer's heart, because faith is not truly revealed in moments of comfort, but in moments of confusion. It's easy to trust when prayers are answered quickly, when the path is clear, and when life aligns with your expectations. But real faith begins when understanding ends, when everything around you contradicts what you believe, when the evidence of hope disappears, and when silence seems to echo louder than your prayers. That's where true faith is born. Faith is not about seeing, it's about believing. It's the quiet confidence that even when everything falls apart, God is still holding it all together. There are times when God allows your faith to be stretched to its limit so that you can discover what it truly means to trust Him. He doesn't test your faith to break you, He tests it to build you. He allows the storm so you can learn that He is your anchor. He allows the night so you can see the power of His light. When you walk through seasons of uncertainty, when you feel as though heaven is silent, that is not the time to give up, it's the time to stand firm. Because faith that is untested cannot be trusted. Only through pressure does it grow strong. Faith is choosing to trust when your heart is weary and your mind is full of questions. It's believing that there's purpose in the pain, even when you can't see it. God never promised that the journey of faith would be easy, but He promised that He would be with you through it all. You may not always feel His presence, but He's there, quietly guiding, silently strengthening, faithfully watching over you. Faith is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to believe in spite of it. It's saying, Lord, I don't understand this, but I trust you anyway. Think of Abraham, who was told to leave his home without knowing where he was going. He didn't have a map, a plan, or an explanation, just a promise. Yet he went because he trusted the one who called him. Or consider Noah, who built an ark when there wasn't a cloud in the sky. He looked foolish to the world, but his faith was anchored in obedience, not approval. Or Daniel, who prayed even when it meant being thrown into the lion's den. He didn't know the outcome, but he knew his God. That's what faith looks like: obedience without certainty, trust without evidence, peace without explanation. The human heart longs for clarity, for visible signs that everything will be okay. But faith requires walking without sight. It's learning to let go of the need to control and allowing God to lead, even when the path seems uncertain. It's trusting that the same God who created the stars also orders the details of your life. And even when the pieces don't seem to fit, He's still working behind the scenes, turning what was meant for harm into something good. Faith sees beyond the temporary chaos to the eternal purpose hidden within it. Sometimes God hides the full picture from you, not because He wants to confuse you, but because He wants to draw you closer to Him. If you knew every detail, you would rely on your plan instead of His presence. The mystery of faith keeps you dependent. It keeps you praying, seeking, believing. God allows moments that don't make sense so that your faith can grow roots deep enough to survive the storms of life. Shallow faith looks for quick answers. Mature faith learns to wait, to trust, and to rest in the unseen hand of God. There are seasons when you'll ask, "Where are you, God?" And it feels like there's no answer. But silence is not abandonment. It's often the sound of God working. When a teacher gives a test, the classroom is quiet, but the teacher is still present. The same is true with God. When you feel like you can't hear Him, it may be because He's testing your trust. Will you still believe when you don't feel Him near? Will you still stand on His promises when nothing looks like they're coming true? That's where faith becomes real. When you worship in the middle of the waiting, when you praise Him in the middle of pain, when you trust him even when you can't trace him. Faith isn't about outcomes, it's about obedience. It's not about everything going right, but about choosing to believe that God is right even when life isn't. There will be moments when logic says it's over, when emotions tell you to quit, when circumstances scream that there's no way forward, but faith whispers, hold on. Faith reminds you that you walk by promise, not by sight. It reminds you that God can make a way where there seems to be no way. And even if he doesn't move in the way you expected, faith knows that he is still good. You see, faith is not proven by what you say, but by how you stand when nothing makes sense. It's proven in your perseverance, in your patience, in your peace during chaos. It's proven when you choose gratitude over complaint, prayer over panic, trust over control. Faith is not pretending everything is fine. It's believing that God is still in control even when it isn't. It's the unshakable conviction that his plan is better than yours even when it hurts. Faith is like walking through fog. You can't see the road ahead, but you keep moving because you trust that the path is still there. Each step you take reveals a little more, and as you move forward, the light grows brighter. God doesn't show you the entire path because he wants you to rely on him for every step. If he gave you the full picture, you wouldn't need faith, you'd just need directions. But he calls you to trust him moment by moment, step by step, day by day. When life doesn't make sense, remember that your faith is not built on circumstances, it's built on a person. And that person has never failed. He has been faithful through generations, through storms, through darkness, through death itself. His promises are unshakable, his love unbreakable. When your mind is full of doubt, go back to what you know to be true. You know he's good. You know he's powerful. You know he keeps his word. That is where faith stands firm, in the character of God, not in the clarity of circumstances. Faith is not meant to be comfortable. It's meant to be courageous. It takes courage to keep believing when you have every reason to give up. It takes courage to walk forward when you can't see where you're going. It takes courage to keep praying when answers are delayed. But faith was never about comfort. It was always about conviction. It's about believing that no matter how dark the night, the dawn will come. It's about trusting that no matter how heavy the burden, his strength will carry you. So when life doesn't make sense, when the plan falls apart, when the future seems uncertain, that's not the end of your faith. It's the proving ground of it. The strongest faith is not built in sunshine, but in storm clouds. It's not built in laughter, but in tears. It's not built in answers, but in trust. The very moments that feel like your faith is being tested are the moments when it's actually being perfected. You are being shaped, stretched, and strengthened for something greater than you can see. Faith is not about understanding the plan. It's about knowing the planner and resting in his unchanging love. God's delays are not denials. He withholds only to bless you more abundantly later. That truth is difficult to grasp when you are in the waiting room of life, praying for something that seems to never arrive. There are moments when it feels like heaven is silent, when every prayer seems to fall back unanswered, and when every effort appears to bring no result. It's in those moments that doubt tries to whisper, maybe God has forgotten you. But God never forgets his children. What feels like a delay is often divine timing preparing something greater than you imagined. The hand that holds back what you're asking for is the same hand that is shaping the blessing so it fits perfectly into his plan for your life. Sometimes God doesn't give you what you want right away because he's protecting you from getting something too soon. A blessing given too early can become a burden. If a door hasn't opened, it may be because the room behind it isn't ready yet, or maybe you aren't. God's delays are not meant to discourage you, but to develop you. They stretch your faith, refine your motives, and strengthen your patience. Waiting is not punishment, it's preparation. Just as a seed takes time to break through the soil and reach for the sun, your prayers take time to unfold into the fullness of God's design. You may not see growth on the surface, but beneath the ground, something is happening. There's a reason why gold is refined in fire. There's a reason why diamonds form under pressure. There's a reason why trees grow stronger after enduring storms. Likewise, there's a reason why God sometimes makes you wait. Delays forge endurance, and endurance builds character. The longer you wait with faith, the deeper your roots go, anchoring you in trust instead of emotion. The waiting season is where you learn to walk by faith, not by sight. When God seems slow, it's because He's aligning circumstances, people, and timing for your good. What He's preparing for you is not something small, it's something that requires the right moment. Think of Joseph, who was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and unjustly imprisoned. For years it looked like delay after delay, pain after pain. But none of it was denial. God was preparing Joseph for a position of influence that would save nations. The very delay that seemed cruel was the path that led to destiny. Or consider Hannah, who prayed year after year for a child. Her tears watered the ground of faith, and though God seemed silent, He was preparing her to be the mother of a prophet who would change the course of Israel. Or David, anointed as a boy to be king, but sent back to tend sheep for years before the crown ever touched his head. Each delay was not a denial, it was divine preparation. God never wastes time, He redeems it. There are times when you may feel like you're stuck, praying the same prayer, seeing no sign of movement. But even in silence, God is at work. You might not see progress, but He's orchestrating something far beyond your view. The waiting season is where faith either dies or deepens. It's easy to trust when doors swing open and everything flows smoothly, but real trust is forged when heaven seems still. That's when you discover whether your faith depends on results or on relationship. If you trust God only when He's moving fast, you're trusting His hand, not His heart. But when you can trust Him even in the slow, uncertain, and unseen moments, that's when you truly know His heart. God is never in a hurry, but He's never late. His timing may confuse you, but it will never fail you. When He delays, He's not withholding out of neglect. He's waiting until both you and the blessing are ready. If He gave you what you asked for now, it might crush you instead of complete you. You might not have the strength, wisdom, or maturity yet to carry the weight of what He's preparing. So He delays not to deny, but to protect and perfect. He works in layers, preparing the environment, shaping your character, aligning the right people, and refining your purpose so that when the blessing arrives, it lasts. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every season of stillness has a purpose. Sometimes the greatest thing God does for you is not answering a prayer immediately. It teaches you to seek the giver more than the gift, to trust His plan more than your own. If He removed every delay, you'd never learn endurance. If He gave you everything instantly, you'd never discover intimacy with Him in the waiting. Delays teach you dependence. They reveal your heart. They expose whether you love God for what He does or for who He is. And once you realize that the waiting itself is part of the blessing, your perspective changes. There are moments when God withholds because what you're asking for is too small. You think you're praying for something big, but He's planning something far beyond your imagination. You're asking for enough strength to make it through the day, but He's preparing to give you a lifetime of victory. You're praying for a door, and He's preparing to build you a house. You're asking for a blessing, and He's preparing a legacy. When God delays, it's often because He's upgrading what you asked for. His abundance takes time because it's meant to last forever. Waiting with faith is not passive, it's powerful. It's not sitting back in frustration, it's standing firm in expectation. It's choosing to praise before the breakthrough, to worship before the blessing, to trust before the outcome. When you learn to wait with worship, the delay no longer feels like a burden, it becomes an altar of surrender. Each moment of waiting becomes an opportunity to prove your faith. You may not control the timing, but you can control your posture. Choose patience over panic, trust over turmoil, and hope over despair. Sometimes the reason for the delay is that God wants you to grow into the person who can handle the promise. The blessing isn't just about receiving, it's about becoming. You may think you're waiting on God, but sometimes He's waiting on you, waiting for you to let go of fear, waiting for you to surrender control, waiting for you to trust Him fully. Once your heart aligns with His will, the delay dissolves, and what once seemed far off suddenly arrives with divine speed. And when that moment comes, when what you prayed for finally unfolds, you'll realize why God made you wait. You'll see how every delay was a setup for something greater. You'll understand why certain doors had to stay closed, why certain people had to walk away, why certain seasons felt silent, Because if those things hadn't happened, you wouldn't have been ready to receive the abundance that was waiting for you. God's timing is never wrong, it's always redemptive. What feels like a delay is often God setting the stage for a miracle. When the time is right, what took years to build will unfold in moments, and you'll see that is not yet was never no. It was, I have something better. Abundance always follows surrender. Peace, purpose, and blessing come to those who wait faithfully. That is a principle that has been proven throughout the lives of countless believers and throughout the pages of Scripture. Many of us chase after blessings, opportunities, and outcomes with our own strength, thinking that if we push hard enough, we can force results. But true abundance is never earned through striving alone. It is received through surrender. When you yield your plans, your timing, and your desires to God, you create space for His power to move freely in your life. Surrender is not giving up. It is choosing to trust that God's way is higher than your own. Surrender requires humility. It means acknowledging that we do not have the full picture and that our understanding is limited. It means letting go of the need to control every outcome and placing our lives into the hands of a God who knows the end from the beginning. This is not easy because it goes against our nature to trust something we cannot see or measure. Yet surrender is the very doorway through which God's abundance flows. When we stop trying to manage every detail and instead let Him lead, we position ourselves for peace, clarity, and provision that far exceeds our expectations. Those who learn to wait faithfully discover that surrender is not a one-time act, but a daily posture. Every morning, you can choose to lay down your anxieties, your agendas, and your fears, saying, Lord, I trust you today. I will follow your timing, not my own. Every challenge, every unanswered prayer, every closed door is an opportunity to practice surrender. The act of yielding strengthens faith, deepens trust, and teaches the soul to rely not on human effort, but on divine provision. Surrender opens the heart to recognize blessings that might otherwise go unnoticed because they don't arrive in the way we imagined. Abundance in God's sense is different from what the world calls abundance. It is not measured by wealth, status, or recognition, though sometimes those are included. True abundance is the overflow of His presence in your life. Peace in the midst of trials, joy in the middle of sorrow, strength when you are weak, and clarity when the path seems uncertain. It is the kind of blessing that satisfies the soul and fulfills the purpose for which you were created. And this abundance is always linked to surrender because it cannot be earned by force. It can only be received by faith. Think of the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus. When the angel came to announce that she would bear the Savior, she did not understand fully what it would mean or how it would happen. Yet she said, "Let it be according to your word." That simple act of surrender brought forth the greatest blessing the world has ever known. Mary's obedience did not make her life free from challenges or sorrow, but it aligned her perfectly with God's purpose, and through her, the promise of salvation entered the world. Surrender prepared her for the abundance God wanted to give, a blessing far greater than she could have imagined. Waiting faithfully is also an act of trust. To surrender is to wait without anxiety, to rest without insisting on immediate results, and to believe that God's timing is perfect. It is easy to lose heart when blessings seem delayed, but those who remain patient in their waiting are often the ones who receive the fullness of God's promises. God honors faithfulness even in the quiet seasons when nothing seems to happen. Each act of surrender, each choice to trust despite uncertainty, builds the spiritual maturity required to receive what God has prepared. Surrender changes the heart. When you stop clinging to control, you begin to see God's hand in every circumstance. You start to recognize that even closed doors, failed plans, and unexpected detours are part of a larger design orchestrated for your good. The act of releasing control shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance, from focusing on what is missing to appreciating what is already present. Surrender transforms fear into faith, confusion into clarity, and waiting into worship. Abundance often comes in ways that we do not anticipate. When you surrender fully, you allow God to work creatively on your behalf. Sometimes He provides in unexpected ways, opening doors you never considered, bringing people into your life who shape your destiny or guiding you toward opportunities that align perfectly with your purpose. The abundance that follows surrender is never just material. It is holistic. It includes peace that calms the mind, purpose that directs your steps, and blessings that feed both the spirit and the soul. Surrender also teaches gratitude. When you stop trying to force outcomes, you learn to celebrate the present moment and recognize God's faithfulness in small things. Gratitude opens the heart to receive more because it aligns your mind with God's perspective. You begin to see that abundance is not always in the quantity of what you receive, but in the quality of what you experience. Peace, joy, and spiritual fulfillment become more valuable than any earthly gain, and these are the true markers of God's blessing. Those who surrender fully also experience freedom from anxiety, fear, and the constant pressure to control their lives. When you trust God's timing and relinquish the need to manage everything, you find a peace that the world cannot give. You begin to move through life with confidence, knowing that your steps are guided by a loving hand. The act of surrender releases you from the burden of trying to make everything happen and allows you to walk in the assurance that God's plan is perfect. Surrender requires faith, patience, and perseverance. It is not always easy, and there will be moments when doubt and frustration arise. But every moment of obedience, every choice to trust rather than resist, strengthens the foundation of your faith. Each act of surrender is like planting a seed. Though you cannot always see the fruit immediately, it grows unseen until the harvest comes. God's timing ensures that the abundance arrives when you are ready, fully equipped to embrace it and steward it well. The blessing that follows surrender is both immediate and eternal. You may feel the peace, joy, and purpose in the waiting, even before the full manifestation of your prayers. This is God's way of training your heart to receive His abundance with humility and gratitude. The process itself is part of the blessing. The lessons learned, the patience developed, and the faith strengthened all become a foundation for the greater things He is preparing. Abundance is not merely an external reward. It is the overflow of a life aligned with God's will. When you surrender, you allow His Spirit to fill you, guide you, and lead you into fullness. The peace that comes from trusting Him replaces anxiety. The purpose that comes from following Him replaces confusion. And the blessings that flow from His hand replace striving. True abundance is the natural outcome of a surrendered life, a life that no longer fights against God's timing but embraces it fully, trusting that He knows what is best. Those who wait faithfully discover that surrender is not passive resignation but active trust. It is a posture of readiness, a willingness to receive, and a choice to worship even in uncertainty. The blessings that come from such a heart are not fleeting, they are enduring. God honors a surrendered heart because it reflects His own heart of love, wisdom, and generosity. When you yield completely, you are in the perfect position to receive the fullness of His abundance. Surrender allows God to do what you cannot. When you try to control every outcome, you limit the possibilities. When you surrender, you open the door to miracles, provision, and divine favor that exceed your imagination. The abundance that follows surrender is not constrained by human limitations. It flows freely, overflowing into every area of your life, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, and even materially. When you stop holding on and let go, you create space for God to pour out His blessings without restraint. Faithful surrender transforms waiting into worship, doubt into confidence, and limitation into possibility. The one who learns to yield fully to God experiences a life of abundance that cannot be measured by human standards. Peace fills the heart, purpose directs the steps, and blessings flow continuously. Surrender positions you in alignment with God's perfect plan, allowing His abundance to manifest in ways that are far beyond what you could have imagined. Those who embrace surrender understand that life is not about what they can achieve on their own, but about what God can accomplish through them. Abundance is not simply about receiving. It is about living in harmony with God's will and trusting that He is orchestrating every detail for your good. When you surrender completely, the flow of His blessings becomes unstoppable, and the life of fullness that you have been waiting for begins to unfold naturally, seamlessly, and powerfully.